All right, welcome back. I have many students that don't know how to draw a block letter. When I say draw a block letter, they're like, I don't know what you mean. And that's because some letters, we're used to drawing curves like S's and D's and O's. So I like to do a little quick demo on what it means to draw a block letter for 1 point perspective. The rule is you want all your letters to have straight lines. We don't want any curves. So some simple tricks to start that. Let's look at an S. I like to start with drawing the actual letter first. Okay, and what that does is help me plan and figure out without having to kind of guess. So in the end, we're going to draw over this line, and you can use your ruler, and when you're doing this, it's best to use a ruler. It is a little slower, but it just helps. So I'm going to draw the top of the S right here. I'm not going to worry about that line. I'm going to ignore it because we're going to erase it. It will be a working line. So as I draw, I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm going to erase right there. And then I'm going to come back down, and I'm using it as a guide, and it's just something that helps you see what you're doing. If you're not experienced at it and you need a little extra guidance, it just helps. It's just a trick. And some of you may not need to do all this. Some of you may actually be able to draw the letter just fine without the guide, and that's okay. As long as you have straight lines, that's what we want. We want those straight lines. So as I go across, I'm going to go around. And now I'm going to go up. And I could have gone a little different in my size and shape. It's not a problem, but in the end, you just want it to look good. You can play with them. Everybody's S's may look slightly different. That's not a problem. As long as they have the lines, as long as everything has straight edges. So here is an S. So I'm going to erase my working line, which was the S that I started with. I'm going to erase that. And now I have a nice little S to start with, and that's going to be a letter that has points that I'm going to be able to use. So the other one is a D. My students always ask me, how do I do a D? So let's do the same thing. I'm going to start with my D. I'm going to start with here. That's a curved line, right? So I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to draw my line, and I'm just going to ignore the actual shape. I'm going to go around it, and I'm going to draw. And what's going to happen is, a lot of times what confuses students is all of a sudden I'm going to end up with an O. It's going to be like, wait a minute, that's an O. I've done this is how I make an O. Here we go. Now I'm going to draw the inside. I'm going to go ahead and erase this for now because I think we've got the point, right? We got the point. It's a D. I'm going to finish this off, and I'm going to have an O. So I've just showed you how to make an O. And we'll turn that O into a D. Here I go. Here we go. All right. Now we have an O, but we wanted a D, right? So we got to make this feel round without making it round. So I'm going to come over here, draw my line. And this little line, what's going to happen when I erase this? It's going to make it feel like a D, and I want that to be parallel, so I'm going to drag that out. And I'm going to erase right here, right? And do that same thing over here. And guys, one thing I always point out that I really want you to understand is I draw a lot heavier than you should be drawing because I want you to be able to see what's happening on the camera. So if you draw lighter, the idea is not to see the lines that you erase. And if you draw light when you're working, you won't have those lines. And we don't want to see those lines. I don't want to see that line when you erase it. But because I draw heavy for the camera, you can see that. All right, so there you go. I have a D. And if I was clever and wanted to turn that D into a P, I could easily do that by extending this line out. Extending this line out. And now I have a P, right? So this process is going to apply to every letter. Just be creative in how you do it. And remember, what we want is straight lines. We don't want any curves. right? We don't want curves. We want a shape. This is a shape, not a line. And no curves. That is what we mean by block